Wonderful. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to our 4th annual C.A.R.E Week Kickoff event. My name is Jessica, and I am one of our global C.A.R.E Week champions this year. I've been with Xactly for 5.5 years, and this is my 4th year being involved in the planning committee.
Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Rustoffer, and I am your other global C.A.R.E Week champion. I've been with Xactly for over 6 years, and I'm really proud and excited of the events that we put together for you this year. We'd now like to hand it over to our founder and CEO, Chris Cabrera, and our CMO, Johann Wrede.
Hi, everybody. I'm Johann, and I am Xactly CMO, joined today by Chris Cabrera, our CEO. And this is my first C.A.R.E Week. I've been on board for about a month and a half, and so I'm really excited to dig in and learn a little bit more about what we're doing this week and get some of the background from Chris. Now, Chris, you and I first had a conversation, I think our first conversation, around culture and values and what that means. So could you give us some background on what C.A.R.E is and what C.A.R.E Week is?
Yeah, sure. Great to be here, Johann, and thank you, Jessica and Lauren, for the introduction and for your great work on being global C.A.R.E Week champions. That's awesome. This is a very special week at Xactly. You know, every day of the year is it is important that we follow our core values, but we created a week, and this is our 4th year of doing this, where we kind of provide extra special attention to what our core values are. Our core values spell out care, and so it's customer focus, accountability, respect, and excellence. And we really, truly do live by those core values and make decisions in the company about, through the lens of those core values. And so we've created this week where each day of the week is dedicated to one of those 4 core values. And then the culmination on Friday is that we, pre-COVID, we would all go and do things philanthropically in our local communities. This week, of course, we're still going to do some of that, but some folks will actually be staying home and maybe doing some things, craft-wise and donations and things like that they can do. So we'll, make do on that. But that's really what C.A.R.E Week's all about. It's just bring attention to the great core values that we have.
So I'd love to talk about those core values because from what I've seen in the time I've been here, that is absolutely the way we look at the world. So first, I guess the question is, why 4? Why not 5? Why not 7? And how did you land on 4?
That's a great question. I get that a lot. I went to college and went through an entrepreneur program down at USC, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And all the classes and everything trained you that you needed to have core values when you start a company. And so we sort of diligently did that when we first started Xactly back in 2005. And we got a bunch of smart people in the room. We only had about a dozen people at the time, and we created this long list of our values. And there were 13 of them. And so we posted them everywhere. We put them on the website, we put them on posters on the walls, and we thought, hey, we're building a startup and we got core values. And so then we got to, of course, the hard work of building a business, and, kind of before you know it, 2 years went by. And I started to, by this time, we probably had 70 or 80 people in the company. And I started to, walk the halls, and I would stop somebody and say, hey, what do you think our core values are? And I'd immediately get like this frozen stare, and they'd be like, trustworthy, loyal, courteous, friendly, give me the Boy Scout oath. And so what I realized was, we don't have core values. I mean, if people don't know what they are and they're not able to tell you why they're important, then, we're not really living them. And just having them on the website doesn't really, cut it. And so we got, a different group of smart people in a room, and we said, hey, these are all 13 great things. Like, none of them are bad. They're all great core values, but let's pick from this list the ones that are truly core, the ones that, are, we have to have, that we're, it's a game stopper if we don't do it. And so we debated, and we went around and around and around, and we came up with 4. And my job at the end was to be the scribe and say, send out the email and say, here's the ones we came up with. And when I wrote it on the email, I just wrote it in no random order: customer focus, accountability, respect, and excellence. And I was like, hey, that's weird. It spells care. Like, and I kind of like one of those lightning bolts. I'm like, oh, that's serendipitous. Like, this is, I know I'm on the right track now. And that's how we came up with the 4. And that's that, ever since then, it's been care. And now, to this day, you can't find an Xactly person. And I often challenge our customers when they used to come through training pre-COVID. I'd bet on my paycheck that they couldn't find an Xactly employee who didn't know what our core values are and couldn't tell you why they're important. And if they did, I was betting them my paycheck. And so I'm proud to report that I've yet to have to give up my paycheck, but I'm a little nervous right now with how big the company's getting and with COVID and all that stuff.
Well, I was going to ask you about the acronym, because I was wondering, did you back into that, or it sounds like it was just serendipity?
Yeah, totally. It was amazing. And that's, again, that's how I knew we were on the right track.
That's amazing. And I think, it seems to be attaching every employee who's joining, including me as I come in, like, these are very much aligned with the corporate culture. And even when we think about what we look for in decision making and how people come to work every day, it's really, really obvious. So I think your paycheck is safe. I guess, can you talk a little bit more about that process? So you got in a room twice to say, these are the values, and then let's distill it down and really come away with those values. What about your background? What about you and the group of people you were with that time helped you land on those specific 4? Because I can imagine the debate was pretty healthy, having 13, trying to whittle them down.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I grew up in a family with lots of brothers and sisters, and my dad was always an entrepreneur. And in those days, he was a local entrepreneur, so all of the employees were literally within the driving distance. And I was his tag along, from the time I can remember. And I can remember him driving around with us with a station wagon loaded with frozen turkeys, and we would be delivering them the night before Thanksgiving to all the employees. And at the time I didn't know any better, but what I recognized when I got older was the camaraderie that he had built, and the loyalty that he had built, and the culture of the company, regardless of what the industry was. It didn't really matter. And I just always felt that was important, that I wanted to, I mean, yes, it's important what Xactly does, but I've often said, we could change course tomorrow and go into, a totally different industry. And I'm just confident that we would be great at it, because it's the culture and the people that, that are smart enough that they could figure out how to pivot, they could learn new things. But, what we're doing is probably less important than how we're doing it, in my opinion. And I think that was super important as we started the company. And the very first real event that we ever did as a company, there was less than a dozen of us. We went to this Habitat for Humanity and helped some underprivileged people with their homes. And I remember we worked all day, and we said, hey, let's go get a drink afterward. And so the dozen of us were sitting around having sodas or alcohol or whatever it was. And I just remember sitting back for a second and going, wow, there was so much camaraderie, and people weren't talking about work. They weren't talking about, oh, I got to get this project done or that. They were just talking about mankind and womankind, and like being together and what it meant. And I just thought, I remember thinking from that point forward that we were going to make philanthropy a piece of what we wanted to do. And that led into the core values. Now, again, at that time, I was still thinking in terms of 13 core values. When we did that distillation down, again, it was really, we have to have the customer first mentality, and that's, so many companies, pay lip service to that. Oh yeah, we care about the customer. But, I felt like it was important to think differently about that. Meaning, of course, we're going to care about our customers. Like, again, it's a going out of business strategy if you don't. But in our world, the majority of our customers were using spreadsheets, right? They didn't even know we existed to automate compensation at that time. And so it's one of those things where people say, oh, you got to listen to your customers. And, it's like, great. If we listen to our customers, they weren't asking for, they didn't know that the kind of automation we could do and the kind of, ways we could change their world. And so I felt like, one of the things that was incumbent on us was to not only listen to them, but also to think ahead of what the things they're challenged with, so that we could be there when they, got onto the platform and figured out how to automate, and then invariably said, what's next? What else can I do? And we had to be thinking ahead, because they would never have known to ask us for, the kind of reporting we do, the kind of data analysis, the AI models that we have. I mean, if we waited for them to ask us for that, it never happened. So that was kind of why we had put that stake in the ground on customer focus. And then accountability was important, because I always wanted, I come from the sales background. I always, was always like, you make your numbers good, you miss your numbers bad, and you kind of hold people accountable. And I wanted a culture of accountability. I had come from a place where, they had this thing called the company name Time. And I was like, what? I don't understand. What is that? And it's like, oh, well, our meetings kind of start whenever the majority of people get there. And so I'd be like first person in the meeting. 10 minutes later, we would start the meeting. And that used to drive me insane. And so to me, that's an accountability problem, right? I don't want a company like that. I want a company where people do what they say they're going to do, and they, show up on time to things, and and they hold each other accountable. And so that was really the A. The R was about respect for cultural and experiential diversity. And so we knew, and again, seems today to be very, very in vogue. This was almost 17 years ago, right? I mean, so we were on the early days of this, of making sure that we had a diverse exec team, a diverse population, a diverse customer space, and always thinking about ways to be inclusive and bring in people from all kinds of different backgrounds, because we just knew that would make us a better company. And then we kind of said we could stop there, and the core values would have spelled out CAR. And while I'm a car guy, I thought, but the problem with all that is we could be this cool, fun-loving, great place to work, but unless we're great at what we do, whatever that might be, today it's comp, now it's the expanded revolution that we're doing around this much bigger story, but I think more importantly, I felt like we had to just be great at what we do. We couldn't be just okay. We had to be at the top of our score, and that's what the E is, and I'm sorry for the long answer. Why those four and why it's so important to me.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about this, because some of what I'm sort of piecing together is that these core values in this culture creates a sort of a virtuous cycle, because as I heard you talk about, customer first doesn't just mean, hey, we love our customers, but you're actually thinking about how do we anticipate, how do we drive innovation, and then how can we be accountable to actually deliver innovation, and how can we do that in a way that values diversity, because without diversity, we can't really be innovative, right? So it's just really interesting to think about the implications that culture has to the core business. So it's not just a good idea. And I also want to kind of go back. You said this was how many years ago did you say you were working on this? Did you say 17?
Well, we started the company in 2005, and it was shortly after March of 2005 where we came up with the 13. It was probably sometime in 2007 when I started asking people and realized, we really didn't have core values, and that's when we sort of put the stake in the ground about C.A.R.E. And yeah.
And so, because it feels like you were doing that work before it was cool to do that work.
I think so. I mean, I think, as I say, I learned a long time ago. I had a boss back in my SGI days who was an African-American guy. And he really, really, I came out of school, and, I just was probably oblivious to some things. And, I remember he gave me, six head count to go hire. The company was going, growing like crazy. And I went and hired the first three, and I thought, he was going to like congratulate me. And instead he berated me and said, hey, you just hired 3 guys, literal guys, look exactly like you. He goes, how interesting do you think your staff meetings are going to be? Like, you guys all have the same background. You're all going to, have the same experiences. And that was really eye-opening for me. And I was a young guy. I was 21 years old. And I remember thinking, holy cow, I was so embarrassed, because here's this African-American guy like just calling me out on it. And thank God he did, because it changed my life. And from that day forward, I just always had that in my head about how interesting are the meetings going to be if we all have the same background, because we're all going to be like, the same frame of mind, same reference points. And I hated that. And so I've prided myself on my whole career since then of creating these diverse teams so you get different ideas and different experiences and people saying, well, I think of it differently, and we encourage that debate, as you've probably already seen even in the month and a half. That's part of who we are as an organization, and I just love that.
And I love that quote, because I think so often it's hard to sort of imagine what does diversity actually mean, right? Like to say, okay, yes, we're committed to being diverse and inclusive, but what does that look like in actual reality? And I think sort of nailing it down to saying a lively and diverse conversation in a staff meeting where not everybody has groupthink and different ideas because of different backgrounds or valued. I think that's a really important takeaway.
It is, and I think you touched on it a second ago. I truly think that is what's behind us being an innovator. And so, we've prided ourselves all these years of, we constantly win awards for being innovative. Gartner always would call us out, even back in the days when we weren't the biggest, and there were much bigger competitors that did what we did, or a portion of it. They always called us out for being the most innovative because, again, we were the first to the cloud in our space, and we've done the first all the way through. And I believe that all has come from the fact that we bring this diverse group together, as you say, and we challenge each other, and people bring different ideas, and it's partly that they all have these different backgrounds, but it's partly that we're just encouraging that kind of speak, right? It's like, it's okay to tell the CEO, you're nuts. Like, I want to do it this way, and you're wrong.
So I have your permission?
Absolutely, and I think you've seen that already. I mean, I get no respect in the actual staff room, and that's how I want it. I mean, it's like, hey, we're just all equal people. Let's just let's debate it.
Yeah, I love that the best idea wins, and I think that's really, really important. Now, I speaking of the best idea and being first, one of the other questions I wanted to ask about was the foundation, because again, I feel like that was ahead of this trend of everybody setting up charitable foundations and doing that, and that was really motivated as an outgrowth of these core CARE values.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think the philanthropic side of our blueprint, if you will, and I don't want to get on a tangent, but we have a whole blueprint of kind of what makes Xactly successful. It's a combination of our core values of CARE plus our philanthropic stuff that we do, and we were doing that, as I say, the very first team meeting we ever had was this Habitat for Humanity thing that we did very, very early in 2005, probably in the first couple of weeks of forming the company. And so we always had that piece as part of the company. A couple years into it, and I give a lot of credit to Mark Benioff. I mean, I'm so impressed with all the stuff he's done. But at that time, a couple years after we had sort of grassroots been doing this stuff, he came out with that 1-1-1 pledge. And I really liked that. And it resonated with me, this idea that you give 1% of your profits, 1% of your time, and 1% of the founding shares to charity was kind of resonated right away. And so we were so early that I was able to go to my board and say, hey, I want to jump on board to this. I want 1% more of the company, and I want to give it to this. I want to create a foundation, a 501c3, where we'll put this in. Now, again, at that time, it was worthless. The board was like, okay, fine, do that, whatever. But many years later, we took the company public in 2015, and then ultimately got acquired by Vista in 2017. Their shares became worth a lot of money, and so the foundation all of a sudden had a bunch of money in it. But all throughout the years, the philanthropic piece has been there. And we used to always say, hey, we give of our time, not money, because people always wanted us to write checks and things like that. And I always thought that was better anyway, because it's easy to write a check. It's hard to get physically out there with people and help the local communities. And once we had the foundation all done and funded, now we get to do both. And so we give back to charities every single quarter. On the board, we have a board meeting, and the employees vote on what charities we want to give to that particular quarter. And we generally pick 2 or 3, and we write checks, and we send those checks to those. But we also, and again, that's fun and it's neat, and people enjoy getting the money. But I always come back to, it's more important that we get folks out of their chairs, going out in the communities and doing good work, because it's a win-win. Like, not only do the communities, of course, benefit, and that's the main driving force, but I feel like we're benefiting just as much, right? Because I think back to that first experience that I had. That was, I couldn't have paid for a better team bonding experience from a consultant than us going out and giving of our time and free, labor to help, people that were less privileged. And anyway, so I think that's what I want our employees to be thinking and doing. I do think it's important to give financially as well, and that's why we have a program in the company where people can donate from their paycheck directly into the 501c3. I think we're up to pretty darn close to 78, 79% of the employees at Xactly contribute. And my thing is, I don't care if you contribute $1. It's not about the money. It's about the muscle memory of giving. And if you're just giving every 2 weeks and you're doing that, then I think, as you know, today you make 100 grand, pretty soon you'll make 500 grand and $1 million. And that 10 cents you give is going to turn into much bigger numbers because you have that muscle memory, and that it's just part of who you are, to be constantly giving back.
I love that. It's part of the culture and part of the DNA. And I think that's a really good illustration of how we look at our employee base and encourage people to do something, not just during Care Week, but during every week. We're coming up at the end. Our time together has flown by. I actually have so many more questions I want to ask you, but just sort of to wrap this together, put a bow on it. Can you talk just briefly? What are we doing this week? What should people take away from the week?
Well, I mean, for the Xactlyans that are on, just get involved. Listen to the things I've said. Find ways each one of the days to celebrate the core value of that day. On Friday, try to find ways to give back. I know it's tough in the COVID times, but I mean, hey, if the worst thing you do is you donate to Xactly One on Friday, well, then you've done something, you've done your part. But we do have a number of activities going on in the local geographies everywhere in the world that Xactly is. And so, my big thing is just get involved. Just get out there, get involved. It's really important that Xactly play with our local communities and we understand what's going on and their challenges. And right now, there's a lot of people who have, a lot of challenges. And so there's lots of ways to give back. So just find something to do and give back. And as you said, it's really important. This week is just kind of puts an exclamation point on it. But this is a 365-day a year job, and you got to think about this stuff all the time. And so just be mindful. And that's why I just believe that this is something that needs to get ingrained into who we are. And that's why, if I stop somebody in the hallway now, they better know that care is important. They ought to know why it's important, and they ought to understand the connection with this the philanthropy stuff that we do.
I know you were talking to our employees with that, but I think that is good advice for everybody out there. So for anybody who's watching this live stream and is not an Xactlyan, I think the message is the same. Get out, get involved, take part in your community. A rising tide lifts all boats, and what you bring back to your family and to your friends and to the work environment is immeasurable. So,
and if I can, just real quick,
please.
These people ask me all the time, like, Chris, how is it that your company has won the Great Place to Work, and Top Workplace 25 times or something? I think it's this. It's not about what we're doing. It's about how we're doing it. And that's a really important message for anybody in leadership that might be listening or hearing this. This is game-changing stuff, and this is why we have the tenure of people we have at Xactly. This is why we embrace a lot of what we call boomerangs, because they leave the company, they go somewhere else, and they go, holy cow, this is nothing like what, and they want to immediately come back, and we embrace that. But this is why. It's this stuff. Notice we're not talking about comp or automation or this or that. That's important stuff too, but the cultural piece is founded on top of this.
And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, we are up against time. So thank you so much for your time, Chris. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in to watch, and get involved, get engaged, and go out and care.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.